Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Israel and Hamas are very close to reaching a framework deal to end the war in Gaza and promoting lasting Middle East peace, according to White House Press Secretary. President Donald Trump is scheduled to discuss a 21-point peace plan with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Qatar leaders today. Turkey has now joined Spain, Italy and Greece in monitoring the global Samud flotilla carrying aid to Gaza, which continues to sail despite Israel's warnings. The civilian flotilla, including about 40 boats and participants like Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, has now resumed its journey after repairs following a drone strike last week. Sweden is sending radars and anti-drone systems to Denmark to secure upcoming EU summits in Copenhagen after drone incursions disrupted air traffic at 6 airports, according to Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson. Denmark has now banned civilian drone flights and seen NATO and German forces boost airspace surveillance amid rising tensions. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has now ordered 200 Oregon National Guard troops under federal authority to Portland following President Donald Trump's announcement to deploy troops to protect federal immigration facilities. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield filed a lawsuit claiming the President Trump exceeded his powers. A UN-backed report has revealed that Myanmar's military destroyed Rohingya villages and mosques after the 2017 expulsion of the Muslim minority, repurposing the land for security outposts. The investigation also found private firms assisted the military, while Myanmar denies genocide and funding cuts to the international investigation. Moldova's pro-EU ruling party scored a resounding victory over its Russian-leaning rival in a key parliamentary election. These reports are reported by their official results. The win is seen as a strong endorsement of Moldova's bid to join the European Union. At least 4 people were killed and 8 wounded in a shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan, U.S., when gunmen rammed a vehicle into the building, opened fire, and set it alight. Officers engaged and then killed him, while investigators warned that more victims may still be found. Former Thai Minister Thaksin Shinawatra has petitioned for a royal pardon for his 1-year jail sentence after returning from 15 years of self-exile. The ex-Prime Minister was jailed after the Supreme Court ruled he had not served his original 8-year sentence. This follows the removal of his daughter, former Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, last month. We continue our coverage of UNGA, the final day of the United Nations General Assembly's 80th session, which is now officially underway. And among the key leaders expected to address the general debate today are the representatives of Canada, Denmark, Moldova, and North Korea. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand has just concluded her address to the United Nations General Assembly, where she called on Hamas to lay down their weapons and stop this war. These developments come as international pressure on the belligerents in the 2 major conflicts on our planet ramps up across the board. Representatives of Denmark, North Korea, and Nepal are also expected to address the UNGA before General Assembly President Annalena Baerbock's closing remarks. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Thomas Porteous. He's my colleague and correspondent, joins us live from New York. Good to see you, Thomas, thank you for joining. Now, Canada has pledged to address global challenges with the understanding that no nation can solve problems alone. What do you think? What does this suggest?
Well, yes, Asuma, it comes down to the issue of countries working together. Of course, the United Nations, where every single country and nation on the planet is meant to have the same say. Now, of course, there has been calls for more multilateralism, countries working together. However, we've also seen countries slam uh, uh, this idea and give a more protectionist approach, that of the United States. Of course, Donald Trump, in that fiery speech opening the week, he slammed the United Nations and said that I don't need anyone else to maintain peace in this world. I've done it all on my own, citing the 7 wars he has claimed to finish. And so Canada's statements there are in opposite of that. Um, Canada once again emphasizing that the world needs to move together. Of course, other Western allies have also called for this, but mainly from the likes of the global South and also from the likes of China, who has also urged more countries to work together when it comes to tackling the current conflicts going on in the world. Of course, there is much call for reform. This is the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, after all, and its structure remains 80 years old, and so many states, nations are calling for this organization to be reformed. And until there is a United Nations structure that can be brought into the year of 2025, it's unlikely to see this organization being really effective in stopping these ongoing wars. Skirmishes and hostilities will continue and be left to bilateral diplomacy.
And Thomas, now looking back at Canada, Canada emphasized its sovereignty and stated that it will cooperate with other countries to improve its defense. Do you think Canada was trying to emphasize that it will not become 51st state?
Well, of course, this once again comes to the fact that a lot of leaders are throwing out the international rule book. Donald Trump can make a statement and then defense spending goes up. And diplomats panic. Of course, Donald Trump, not your natural leader, but has really shaken the mold up when it comes to making these statements. Of course, this rhetoric has toned down a bit recently, but of course it was referenced in that United Nations General Assembly speech. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, much campaigned and won a huge victory on the basis that he will tackle Donald Trump and face him head on. But his critics say he hasn't done that. But what does go to show is that this rhetoric about Canada becoming the 51st state has indeed died down. But of course, it is something that Canada has faced over the past year, and they are, of course, going to bring it up in their speech in front of the entire United Nations General Assembly.
Right, indeed. Thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us and sharing that insight from New York. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced today that plans to impose steep tariffs on foreign-made movies and furniture, targeting industries he says have been hollowed out by overseas competition. In posts on his Truth Social, he has accused other countries of stealing the U.S. movie industry, saying California has been particularly hard hit, and declared a 100% tariff on all films produced outside the United States. He also highlighted North Carolina's loss of its furniture business to China and other countries, promising substantial tariffs on any country that does not manufacture furniture in the U.S. President Trump did not provide further details on when or how the tariffs would be implemented. Following the announcement, shares of Netflix slipped 1.4% and Warner Brothers Discovery eased 0.6% in pre-market trading. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Peter Cardillo. He's a chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us. Now, how might these new tariffs that are proposed by President Trump affect foreign-made movies and also the furnitures?
Yeah, well, obviously, it was well publicized. He's been saying that for a while in terms of the pharmaceuticals, and of course, last week he did take action. Obviously, I think that's because we were approaching the end of the quarter, and so he wanted to make sure that he would live up to his expectations that he was going to impose these tariffs. Now, they range from anywhere to 25 to 100%. Obviously, they affect some of our trading partners more than others. For instance, India, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, obviously, it's a big deal. And of course, I think, the big tariff amount is once again just a bargaining tactic, and I think that eventually they will be watered down, and it's just a matter of time before the countries that are affected by it begin to come to the bargaining table. So, just like the other tariffs that were imposed, eventually there were some countries who negotiated deals, and the deals obviously saw less of tariffs being imposed. Nevertheless, tariffs are in place, and again, it's just making the right deal at the right time.
And now, given these recent drops in shares of Netflix as well as Warner Brothers, entertainment companies like them, how do you think these tariffs will affect the broader media?
Well, I mean, it affects companies, obviously, but so far, we've seen companies basically beginning, at one point we saw them absorbing the cost. Now we're beginning to see that cost being fickled in through the system, and it's going down to the consumer. So, this is the bottom line is that this is likely to keep inflation elevated, and it becomes a challenge for the central banks throughout the world in how to respond. Here in the States, it's a challenge that Jerome Powell has basically acknowledged, and every other Fed member as well. So I think, again, going back to the new tariffs, that countries are not going to be able to cope with 100%, obviously. So they will come down.
Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing that insight from New York. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on. Moldova's pro-European Party of Action and Solidarity has secured a majority in the country's parliament following a crucial election overshadowed by allegations of Russian interference. The result is being widely seen as a strong affirmation of Moldova's European aspirations and inclination towards EU. Maia Sandu, President of Moldova, noted that the voting was a strong mandate for the process of Moldova's accession to the European Union, and Russia has failed to achieve its objective of manipulating the elections. With over 99.5% ballots counted, the Party of Action and Solidarity has garnered 50.05% of the votes as compared to 24.25% for the pro-Russian patriotic electoral bloc. Let's in fact listen in to what Maia has said.
Votul de ieri este un mandat puternic pentru procesul de aderare a Republicii Moldova la Uniunea Europeană. În toată această perioadă, Kremlinul a încercat să ne dezbine și să lovească în încrederea noastră. Yes, I do believe that Russia has not achieved its objectives. It has spent a lot of money in these elections, but the results show that they failed. We do understand that Russia is not going to stop, but we do believe that it does not have now the opportunity to interfere as much as during the elections.
Now we move on to our next news. A missile strike on a power station in Russia's Belgorod region has caused significant outages and injured at least 3 civilians, Regional Governor Yaroslav Gladkov has reported. The attack, attributed to Ukrainian forces, forced several facilities to switch to backup generators and hit the regional capital twice, with a total of 6 warheads. Gladkov also confirmed that Kyiv's forces launched at least 76 attack drones in the past 24 hours, some of which were intercepted near residential areas. Emergency crews worked overnight to restore power as the city faced disruptions amid ongoing shelling. The Russian Defense Ministry said it shot down 21 drones over Belgorod during the attacks. Let's listen into what Belgorod Region Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov has said.
Враг нанес удар по инфраструктуре. Сейчас оцениваем ущерб. Есть перебои с подачей электроэнергии, достаточно значительные. Сейчас разбираемся в последствиях и будем предпринять максимальные меры для того, чтобы, первое, подключить, где есть возможности, необходимость резервной генерации, и там, где возможно, переподключить для обеспечения нужд населения и наших предприятий.
Now we move on to North America. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has announced he's ending his bid for re-election just 5 weeks before voters go to the polls. Adams said constant media speculation about his future and the city campaign finance board's decision to deny him public matching funds throttled his campaign. His withdrawal narrows the race down to Democrat Zohran Mamdani, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. Adams was elected in 2022 as a Democrat and was running as an independent after he was indicted for alleged bribery and fraud, although the indictment was later dismissed at the direction of the Trump administration. Let's hear in what Eric Adams has said.
Also know some remain unsure of me after the unfortunate events surrounding my federal case. I was wrongfully charged because I fought for this city. And if I had to do it again, I would fight for New York again. And yet, despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign. I hope that over time, New Yorkers will see this city thrive under our leadership, and that policies we put in place should be continued and expanded. I hope you will see that despite the headlines and innuendo, I always put you before.
Now we go to Thomas Porteous. He's my colleague and correspondent, joins us live from New York. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us again. Thomas, what more can you tell us about the New York re-election and the situation there?
Well, yes, when I talk to New Yorkers here, this is a huge issue for them. Rumors about Eric Adams, the current mayor, about him dropping out of this race have been spiraling for some weeks now. Of course, Zohran Mamdani is the huge favorite, with him having a double-point lead in most polls that have been put out. Do bear in mind that most polls were prior to when Eric Adams did drop out of the race. But of course, that leads this, many people are saying, to a two-horse race. Of course, Andrew Cuomo, former governor of New York State, running now as an independent after he lost the Democratic primary to an unprecedented victory by Zohran Mamdani, a man who had little to no funding, still has little to no funding, but has led this rampant social media campaign here in New York City. He's very unapologetic in his ideology, a democratic socialist, um, as he states gladly, and his foreign policy is very well known. He's a huge human rights advocate, and this has done very, very well for him in terms of popularity ratings, in terms of social media. Many New Yorkers think here it's time for a change, and of course, with Donald Trump's administration in the background, and with a man running, of course, who says that he will face the Trump administration head on. These next 5 weeks are going to be very, very interesting here in New York City. But the question is, will Eric Adams dropping out of the race benefit Andrew Cuomo or Zohran Mamdani?
Right. With that, I would like to thank Thomas Porteous, my colleague, for joining us live from New York. Thank you. Now we move on. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian condemns the snapback sanctions mechanism initiated by Britain, France, and Germany at the UN Security Council amid accusations that Iran violated the 2015 nuclear deal, which Iran denies. Speaking on Tehran on National Firefighters Day, Pezeshkian also criticized the UN for not imposing sanctions on Israel, citing the US veto as a reason. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. The sanctions reinstated yesterday, including an arms embargo, restrictions on oil, banking and finance, a ban on uranium enrichment, limitations on ballistic missile activities, and asset freezes, as well as travel bans targeting Iranian individuals and entities. Let's listen into what Iranian president has said.
تصور این که بتونن ایران ما رو مردم ما رو به زانو در بیارن تصوری است که در خوابش ببینن. ایران چیزی است که هست، کشوری که در حقیقت منطقه رو به هم ریخته. تا حالا یه بار شورای امنیت اون رو تحریم نکرده، محکوم نکرده، برای اینکه یه آمریکایی اونجا وجود داره که برمی‌داره هر کسی میخواد حرف بزنه وتو میکنه. کل منطقه رو به هم زده. اون وقت ما که میخوایم تو این منطقه، تو این مملکت، تو این دنیا، تو این جامعه زندگی بکنیم، هر روز میخوان ما رو تحریم بکنن. چرا؟
Now we move on. Electronic Arts has announced that it has been acquired by an investor consortium led by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund and supported by American investment firms, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners in an all-cash transaction that values the video game giant at an enterprise value of approximately $55 billion. The transaction was approved by EA's board of directors. It is expected to close in Q1 financial year 27 and is subjected to customary closing conditions, including receipt of required regulatory approvals and approval by EA stockholders. Following the close of the transaction, EA's common stock will no longer be listed on any public market. For EA, the maker of some of the most popular video games on the market like Call of Duty, The Sims, and Madden NFL, this deal represents the single largest all-cash sponsor take private investment in history. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Peter Cordillo. He's a chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, joins us live from New York. Thank you, Peter, for staying with us. Now looking at this deal, how significant is it, and what implications does this landmark $55 billion all-cash acquisition have for the video game industry?
Sure. Well, let me just start off by saying, that this year we've seen mergers and acquisitions picked up. And of course, we've seen some companies go private off the public market and going into private enterprises. Of course, this Electronic Arts going private at $55 billion is very significant, being backed by the Saudis' private investment fund and Silver Lake, two big names. And this, of course, indicates that there's a lot of value, and people are willing to take on the risk of increasing value. And so this is good news. And, you know, anytime you have companies going off the public market into private hands for the right reasons, let's understand each other, that's always a positive, and the markets like that. So yeah, this is a very big deal in terms of the amount, and who knows, maybe 5 years from now, they may want to bring it back to the public markets again. It could very well happen.
And especially, what does this mean for in terms of competition, investment, and the potential influence of foreign investors in global tech companies?
It has two points here. One, it shows confidence. Second, the shareholders will be taking part in this because they'll get what they're being paid for. So again, it's like an acquisition, and that's always good for investors as long as they're making out on the plus side.
How will Electronic Arts acquisition by a consortium led by Saudi Arabia, in particular's public investment, affect the company's long-term strategy, particularly regarding its maybe corporate governance?
Yeah, well, again, the Saudis have been committing to big investments in the States, and this is another one. And so it shows that there's plenty of cash floating around in the systems, in the world markets, and in the world systems themselves, and that's very positive. So anytime we see a country like Saudi Arabia engaging in this type of a acquisition, or taking it private, I should say, is a good sign. It's a friendly sign, and a sign that they see value here in the States.
And what does it mean for what are the potential economic impacts of Electronic Arts being taken private long term for financial transparency?
I think it's a boost, like I said before. It gives it shrinks the competition in the public market, correct? And of course, it shows that people are interested in this particular field, and that's important. So the Saudis, I guess, feel very comfortable in working with a company that's basically a video, etc.
Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing that. We'll come back to you in a second. Now, Electronic Arts has announced that it has been acquired by an investor consortium led by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund and supported by American investment firms Silver Lake and Affinity Partners in an all-cash transaction that values the video game giant at an enterprise value of approximately $55 billion. The transaction was approved by EA's board of directors. It is expected to close in Q1 FY27 and is just subject to customary closing conditions, including receipt of required regulatory approvals and approval by EA stockholder. Following the close of the transaction, EA's common stock will no longer be listed on any public market. For EA, the maker of some of the most popular video games on the market like Call of Duty, The Sims, and Madden NFL, this deal represents the single largest all-cash sponsor take-private investment in history. Thank you, Peter Cordio, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. We have a breaking news. President Trump slams Zohran Mamdani as the self-proclaimed New York City communist running for mayor. Trump has said that Mamdani's fake communist promises will fail, pointing to the failure of communism throughout history. He further added that Mamdani will not receive any support from him, despite his need for funding to fulfill his agenda. President Trump questions the point of voting for a candidate who embraces a failed ideology. This comes after New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced that he is ending his bid for re-election just 5 weeks before voters go to the polls. His withdrawal narrows the race down to Democrat Zohran Mamdani, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. Now for this, we are joined by Thomas Porteous. He's a correspondent joining us live from New York. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining us. What more can you tell us about this news?
Yes, hello once again, Asuma. Donald Trump, this is not the first time Donald Trump has been open and critical of candidate Zohran Mamdani. He, of course, has spoken about him before, labeled him a communist, which he is not, of course. Zohran Mamdani gladly calls himself a democratic socialist. He often advocates for the decline of economic. He wants free and fast buses. He is affordability. He has campaigned on, and to Donald Trump, who is of course a staunch capitalist, he labels this as communism, which is something that Republicans have done for years. And so Zohran Mamdani's policies in one of the most expensive cities in the world led him to an unprecedented victory in the Democratic primary, and it's looking likely from his double-point leads in polls that he is going to win the mayoral candidacy of New York City. And so with that, of course, comes and needs funding from the federal government, from which Donald Trump said that he is not going to give him. Donald Trump is also expected to deploy troops into New York City, which he has done right now, of course, in Oregon, and has done previously when there has been Democratic states and cities previously that he does not agree with. Of course, this is a huge development, but more of the same rhetoric from Donald Trump. Once again, this is America's biggest city. This is when Donald Trump built his life. There's a Trump Tower right down the street back there, and Donald Trump built his life here in Manhattan. And the fact that a self-quoted democratic socialist is about to win a mayoral election here is something that Donald Trump does not want. He has been vocal. Zohran Mamdani has been vocally has been a vocal opposition to billionaires, as he's going to tax them more in order to fund these cuts. And so these are Donald Trump's donors, and that is something that he does not want. Back to you.
And Thomas, do you think that this kind of rhetoric by President Trump, will it affect his Mamdani's popularity, as you mentioned earlier, that he's very popular in New York?
Well, New York is a Democratic-run city, Asuma. It has been for years now, much like most metropolitan cities here in the United States, much more liberal than that of rural areas, where Donald Trump and his ideology and agenda obviously thrives. Of course, this won't affect Zohran Mamdani's credibility whatsoever. Donald Trump isn't very popular here in New York City, especially among the locals. We've also seen this language from Donald Trump before. America, of course, is a hugely partisan party, and we're used to Donald Trump tweeting out things like this in his very unique style on his Truth Social account. Something that we've never seen before in politics. But of course, no, that this will not change the outcome of the election. What's more likely to change and what we're more likely to see is the possibility of that Mayor Adams drop out, and see if that really impacts and those voters teal off to Andrew Cuomo. We'll see when the new polls come out in the coming weeks.
Inside, we'll come back to you in a minute. Now, President Donald Trump has further hinted at substantial tariffs for furniture made outside the United States and has touted this move in order to protect North Carolina's furniture industry. This move comes amid a host of sectoral tariffs on key imports like pharmaceuticals and minerals, and is expected to impact markets across the world in a severe manner. Now we go back to Thomas Porteous. He's my colleague and correspondent, joins us live from New York. Thank you, Tom, for staying with us. Now, what more can you tell us about this evolving situation?
Yes, of course, more tariffs from President Donald Trump, this time citing North Carolina's furniture business decline. Donald Trump has cited that the furniture industry in North Carolina, which was apparently rife, is now failing due to Chinese manufacturing. Now, this is not new, and China has been the manufacturing hub of the world for years. We're obviously unsure how this is going to affect America, but this, of course, follows many other tariffs announced this week, including 100% on the likes of pharmaceuticals and others on kitchen appliances, etc., etc. So it seems that no good or service is safe from Donald Trump's tariffs. Of course, the Supreme Court currently debilitating on whether Donald Trump was allowed to put those tariffs in his April speech on select countries. However, industry tariffs are fine. That is perfectly legal. And so these will obviously come into effect. We'll see what difference they do make in North Carolina and far further beyond.
With that, I would like to thank Thomas Porteous for joining us live from New York and enlightening us with. Now, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.